The coast of Vancouver is collapsing, not in a predictive model, not in a future simulation, right now, today. Concrete observation towers built for a world war, once standing 70 meters above the ocean, now lie broken on the beach below, monuments to a battle that nature is already winning. This isn't about a distant abstract threat. This is about a city built on ground that is actively dissolving into the sea. An 8.5-kilometer seawall, a beloved icon of the city, is being systematically dismantled by the weather. And beneath it all, a geologic time bomb is counting down to an event that won't just shake the coast. It will drop it. Permanently. This is the story of a city confronting three converging forces: a crumbling foundation, a rising ocean, and a fault line that promises to redraw the map in under 6 minutes. The question is no longer if this world-class city will face a catastrophe. The question is which one will arrive first. Before we break down the three forces colliding to erase this coastline, what's the most fragile landscape you've ever witnessed? Let us know in the comments below. And a quick note, a huge number of you who watch these documentaries are not subscribed. If you value this kind of deep dive storytelling, take 1 second to hit that subscribe button. It's the single most important way you can support this channel and ensure we can keep making them. Let's begin. The first front in this war is being lost at Point Grey. The westernmost tip of Vancouver, home to the University of British Columbia, is not built on solid rock. It is perched on a 70-meter-high cliff of sand, glacial till to be precise. The Quadra Sand Formation and Capilano sediments, material left behind by the last ice age, finely ground and packed together by the weight of glaciers thousands of feet thick. It is beautiful. It is dramatic. And it is fundamentally unstable. For decades, the cliffs have been receding, an average of 30 centimeters every single year. A foot of city, gone. It doesn't sound like much. A ruler's length, an imperceptible loss, but it never stops. Every rainfall saturates the sand, turning it from semi-solid ground into a heavy fluid slurry. Every storm surge that pounds the base of the cliffs undercuts the foundation, steepening the slope until gravity's pull becomes undeniable. Then, it lets go, not in inches, but in tons. 40 major landslides have been documented here since the turn of the 20th century. The ground gives way without warning, sending trees, earth, and whatever was built upon it crashing down to the beaches below. The most unambiguous evidence of this slow-motion collapse sits on Tower Beach. The name isn't a metaphor. It is a description. Throughout World War II, the Canadian military built concrete observation posts and gun emplacements along these cliffs to guard the entrance to Vancouver's harbor. They were built to withstand an attack. They were poured with reinforced concrete, anchored deep into what was believed to be stable ground. Today, those same structures are the erosion's most famous casualties. They did not fall to enemy fire. They were defeated by rain and gravity. One tower tilts at a surreal angle, its foundation completely sheared away by a slump in the cliff face. Another has tumbled all the way down, a concrete relic resting among the driftwood, pounded by the same waves it was built to watch over. These are not ancient ruins. These are 20th century fortifications, structures from our grandparents' generation now defeated. They are a physical ledger of how much ground the city has already surrendered, and the process is accelerating. The native forests that once held this soil together with a web of deep roots were cleared for urban development. The drainage systems built for a modern city now collect stormwater and channel it directly over the cliff edges, creating artificial waterfalls that do the erosive work of centuries in a matter of decades. Every new building, every paved road on the UBC campus adds to the runoff that is hollowing out the cliffs from above, while the ocean chews at them from below. Point Grey is being erased from two directions at once. The silent daily retreat of a coastline that simply cannot hold its own weight. It forces a question we rarely ask about the places we love. Is there an iconic landmark in your city that's quietly fallen apart? Let us know in the comments. And yet this natural decay is only the first layer of the problem. Because what happens when the fight against the ocean is no longer passive? What happens when a city builds a wall to hold the water back, and the wall itself starts to fail? To understand that, you have to go to Stanley Park. The Stanley Park Seawall is more than infrastructure. It is the city's living room, an 8.5-kilometer ribbon of pavement that wraps around one of the most famous urban parks on the planet. Walkers, cyclists, families, it is woven into the very identity of Vancouver. Construction on the modern version was completed in 1958, a project of monumental effort designed to protect the park's fragile shoreline from the constant energy of the Pacific. For decades, it worked. It was a symbol of humanity's ability to draw a line in the sand, to shape its environment, to declare where the land ended and the sea began. That line is now being breached. Repeatedly. The enemy has a new name. Atmospheric river. A term that sounds poetic until you experience what it delivers. In November 2021, one such event stalled over southern British Columbia, dumping over 200 millimeters of rain in just 24 hours. It was not just rain. It was a conveyor belt of tropical moisture funneled across the Pacific, aimed directly at the coast. That deluge coincided with a powerful storm surge. The combined force was something the seawall's original engineers had never conceived of. Water didn't just lap against the wall, it blew over it. Waves tore out entire sections of pavement, tossing giant stone blocks like pebbles. The section between Prospect Point and the ancient sea stack known as Seawash Rock was devastated. The park was cut off, the city's most cherished pathway was broken. And it was not a one-time event. On January 7th, 2022, just 2 months later, another storm arrived, this time pairing its surge with a king tide, the highest astronomical tide of the year. The water level was even higher. More damage, more closures. The Vancouver Park Board, the agency tasked with maintaining this icon, is now locked in a cycle it cannot win. Repair, rebuild, wait. Wait for the next storm, the next atmospheric river, the next king tide that pushes the Pacific just a few centimeters higher than the last. Each repair is more expensive. Each closure is longer. This is the reality of coastal squeeze. As global sea levels rise, the ocean is expanding, pushing its baseline higher and higher. Metro Vancouver is already planning for a 1-meter rise by the year 2100. Some high-emission scenarios predict up to 2 meters. This means that a storm surge that was once considered a 1 in 100 year event will soon become a 1 in 10 year event. Then, an annual one. The ocean is running out of room, and it is pushing against the unyielding, immovable concrete of the city itself. The beaches in front of the seawall are disappearing, literally being squeezed out of existence between the rising water and the hard defense. The seawall wasn't built for this new reality. It was built for a 20th century climate, a stable sea level, a predictable pattern of storms. It was built for a world that no longer exists. If you're finding this story as urgent as we do, please hit that like button. It tells the algorithm this is a conversation worth having. And if you know someone who lives on a coast or loves this city, share this video with them. It's a story that affects more people than we realize. The battle for the Stanley Park Seawall is a losing one. The cost of endless repair is becoming unsustainable. Engineers are no longer talking just about realignment, managed retreat, giving sections of the park back to the ocean, because the cost of defending it has become too high. The wall that was meant to be a permanent defense is now being discussed as a temporary one. A line drawn in the mid-20th century that the 21st century ocean is systematically erasing. But the crumbling cliffs and the failing seawall, as terrifying as they are just the symptoms. They are the slow, grinding catastrophes you can see and measure. The real danger to Vancouver is the one you cannot see. The one that is not happening in centimeters per year, but in meters per minute. The one that is building pressure, silently, 100 kilometers offshore. Because the ground that the city is built on is not just eroding, it is waiting to drop. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, a 1,000-kilometer fault line marks one of the most dangerous tectonic boundaries on Earth, the Cascadia Subduction Zone. Here, the massive Juan de Fuca oceanic plate is being forced beneath the continental North American plate. For centuries, the plates do not slide smoothly. They lock. They jam together, building up enormous strain year after year. The North American plate is being squeezed, compressed, and imperceptibly buckled upwards. Then, in a matter of minutes, the plates unlock. The accumulated strain of centuries is released in a single, violent rupture. The result is a megathrust earthquake. Not a magnitude 7. Not a magnitude 8. Seismologists like Dr. John J. Clegg, one of the world's foremost experts on these hazards, are clear. The evidence points to a magnitude 9.0 or greater. The ground shaking would last for 4 to 6 minutes, an eternity of violent motion capable of liquefying the very soil Vancouver is built on. But the shaking, as destructive as it would be, is not the most profound threat. When the plates unlock, the North American plate, which has been buckled upwards for centuries, will snap back. and the coast will not just shake. It will fall. The U.S. Geological Survey and the Geological Survey of Canada have modeled this extensively. Coastal land from northern Vancouver Island to northern California is projected to experience sudden subsidence, an instantaneous drop in elevation of between half a meter and 2 full meters, 1 to 2 meters, in a minute. Let that sink in. The entire coastline, where millions live, will permanently sink closer to the sea. This is not theory. It is history. We know this will happen because it has happened before. Again and again. The last time was at approximately 9 p.m. local time on January 26, 1700. How can we possibly know the date and time of an earthquake that occurred over 300 years ago before written records were kept in the region? The answer comes from 2 places: dead trees in North America and historical archives in Japan. Along the coasts of Washington, Oregon, and Vancouver Island, scientists like Dr. Brian Atwater discovered ghost forests. Entire groves of massive dead cedar trees standing in tidal marshes, killed simultaneously. By studying their tree rings, they could date their death to the winter of 1699 to 1700. The cause of death was saltwater. These were freshwater forests that were suddenly and catastrophically inundated by the sea. The ground beneath them had dropped, plunging them into the tidal zone. The trees drowned where they stood. The other half of the proof came from across the ocean. Japanese historical records from the same period document a mysterious orphan tsunami, a large destructive wave that struck their coast without any preceding earthquake felt in Japan. The wave was not a local phenomenon. It had traveled across the entire Pacific. Working backwards, scientists were able to calculate its origin point in time. A massive earthquake off the coast of North America on the evening of January 26, 1700. The 2 pieces of evidence snapped together perfectly. The ghost forests were the receipt for the Great Dropping. The orphan tsunami was the receipt for the earthquake that caused it. And here's the number that keeps geologists awake at night. Paleoseismic evidence shows that these magnitude 9 events happen along the Cascadia Subduction Zone, on average every 300 to 500 years. It has been 324 years since the last one. We are living squarely within the window. As Drive Clegg has stated, the question is not if, but when. And just a quick friendly reminder, I know, but if you're still with us, and this story is hitting you, that subscribe button is calling your name. Don't make it beg. It's important. Now, imagine the consequences of that instantaneous drop. The city of Richmond, a suburb of Vancouver home to nearly 250,000 people, is built almost entirely on the low-lying silts of the Fraser River Delta. Much of it is already below sea level, protected by a network of dikes. When a Cascadia earthquake hits, that land will drop by a meter or more. The dikes, built to 20th century standards, will suddenly be a meter shorter. The protection they offer will be rendered insufficient in the space of 5 minutes. Flood maps won't just need to be redrawn, they will be rendered obsolete before the shaking even stops. This is not a temporary flood that will recede. It is a permanent shift in the relationship between land and sea. Vast areas of what is now prime real estate will become part of the intertidal zone, permanently. The failing seawall warns us of the ocean's rising power. The crumbling cliffs warn us of our unstable foundations. But the ghost forests warn us of something far more fundamental. A catastrophe that doesn't chip away at the edges of the city, but resets its very geography in a single violent moment. And even that is not the end of the story. Because the earthquake and the subsidence are just the first 2 acts of a 3-part tragedy. The third arrives on the water. A full Cascadia rupture will not just drop the coastline. It will displace a volume of water so immense it is difficult to comprehend, generating a tsunami that will radiate outwards across the Pacific and inwards towards the coast of British Columbia. Researchers like Dr. Katsu Goda at Western University have spent their careers modeling this exact scenario. Their work is precise, and it is terrifying. For exposed communities on the west coast of Vancouver Island, like the resort town of Tofino, the first waves are expected to arrive in just 15 to 30 minutes. 15 minutes, the time it takes to drink a cup of coffee, the time it takes to find your family, to get to high ground to process the fact that the world has just changed forever. Dr. Goda is clear that we should not think of these as waves. They are, in his words, moving walls of water. As the tsunami enters the shallow coastal waters and narrow inlets that define the BC coastline, its energy becomes compressed. The wall of water grows to enormous heights, scouring the landscape with unimaginable force. Now, combine this with the event that just happened. The earthquake has just permanently lowered the coastline by up to 2 meters. The tsunami is not arriving at a normal shoreline. It is arriving at a shoreline that is already underwater. Any existing coastal defense, any seawall or dike that survived the shaking, is now critically compromised before the first wave even makes landfall. It is a 1-2 punch from which there is no recovery. For Vancouver itself, located inside the protective barrier of Vancouver Island, the tsunami threat is less direct but still significant. The wave would channel and refract through the Strait of Georgia, creating complex and unpredictable surges in the very harbors and inlets the city is built around. False Creek, Burrard Inlet, the Fraser River Estuary. All of it would become a conduit for destructive currents and rapid sea level fluctuations that would inundate low-lying areas and destroy marine infrastructure. So now we have the complete picture, the trifecta of risk. First is the slow, inexorable collapse. The crumbling cliffs of Point Grey and the failing seawall of Stanley Park, a constant losing battle against erosion and rising seas, driven by a climate that is becoming more and more hostile. This is the crisis in slow motion. Second is the sudden catastrophic drop, the M9. Zero Cascadia earthquake that instantly lowers the entire coastline, permanently flooding huge swaths of what is now dry land. This is the geological reset button. Third is the immediate violent aftermath, the tsunami that arrives minutes later, attacking a coastline that is already broken and submerged. This is the final blow. These are not separate risks. They are a sequence, a chain reaction of catastrophe, where each event makes the next one exponentially worse. The city is not ignorant of these threats. Metro Vancouver, the regional government serving 2.8 million people, has an integrated flood management strategy. They have climate projections. They have engineering reports. They have adopted updated flood construction levels, requiring new buildings in vulnerable areas to be built higher. There are plans, committees, and assessments. But the scale of the problem is beginning to outstrip the scale of any plausible solution. The estimated cost for the necessary infrastructure upgrades, raising dikes, reinforcing shorelines, retrofitting buildings, runs into the billions, potentially tens of billions over the coming decades. This presents an impossible choice. Where do you spend $1 billion? Do you use it to armor the coast with higher, stronger seawalls, fighting a defensive war against a rising ocean that cannot be stopped? Or do you spend it on managed retreat, buying out properties in newly defined flood zones, and returning parts of the city to nature? Do you invest in seismic upgrades for bridges and hospitals, preparing for the shaking? Or do you completely re-engineer the drainage and dike systems in Richmond and Delta, preparing for the permanent drop? There is not enough money to do it all, not at the scale required, not in the time remaining. Every dollar spent fortifying the Stanley Park Seawall is a dollar not spent raising the dikes around the Fraser River Delta. Every study on cliff stabilization at Point Grey competes for resources with tsunami preparedness programs in coastal communities. It is a triage situation on a metropolitan scale, with no good options. The geology is working against the city. The unconsolidated glacial sand is a foundation built to fail. The climate is working against the city. Atmospheric rivers and rising seas are a force multiplier for every existing weakness. And the tectonic clock is working against the city. 324 years into a 302,500-year cycle. Every single indicator is pointing in the same direction. Vancouver is not a cautionary tale, not yet. It is one of the most beautiful, livable cities in the world. But it is also a city living on borrowed time, on borrowed land. It is a city defined by its proximity to the water, a relationship that has been the source of its prosperity and its beauty. That same relationship is now the source of its existential threat. The falling World War II towers at Point Grey are not just a story about erosion. They are a warning, a message sent from the past about the future. They are proof that what we build, no matter how strong we think it is temporary, and that the line we draw between our world and the natural one is not a line we can hold forever. Okay, last time, I promise. But if you made it this far, you're one of us. Hit subscribe, become part of the community that asks these critical questions. It's the only way we keep this conversation going. The future of Vancouver is not a question of engineering alone. It is a question of physics, economics, and time. The city can build higher walls. It can reinforce the cliffs. It can run tsunami drills. But it cannot stop the Juan de Fuca plate from subducting. It cannot stop the sea from rising. It cannot change the composition of the very ground it sits on. The story of Vancouver's coast is a story of confronting limits. The limits of our engineering, the limits of our finances, and the limits of our ability to deny the forces that are already in motion. The coast is being redrawn. That is no longer in doubt. The only question is how much of the city will be redrawn with it.